sending you something back that you need just to paste in, then you can just do a load operation that takes it from it. Or you can pass it some data as well. You can say, go to that URL with this data, and whatever content you get back, push in that result area to it. More commonly, pass the data to URL, retrieve the contents, this form, retrieve the contents, and in addition, call a handler kind of thing to do some more tasks, which is a bit more sort of involved for it. But I quickly want to show you a little bit about picking up off the form, because that's the other thing that we did in our part with, just as the standard Ajax. Open that window for that. About how you send data to the server in the first place. So where you're reading the text field values, picking the values out, and either you might need to escape the data, which means sort of strip out all the spaces or any reserved characters, whether or not you're sending it by a get or a post, all sorts of ways of sending the data through. You can just say send the entire page over to get there, but it involves in that basic Ajax call. We've done the URL and the success part to it. It involves using a data option where you can specify parameters. And there's many ways of doing it. You can hard code it in. You can just sort of hard code it in and say, right, the data option is this list of parameters, name values, all separated by the ampersands to sort of get through. But more realistically, you're probably going to pick it up off the page somewhere to use it. That's an explicit string to sort of get through it. The better way of getting it, if you like, is where you build up an object for that data property. You say, okay, can you just send over the parameters? You build up a parameters variable, this JSON string. A has got value 1, B has got another value, and you just say, okay, invoke this URL with that sort of set of data to it. We tend not just to hard code it in unless it's going to be the same every time, because that way, using a variable, named as a variable, you can change its data that it's going to be sending over. We'll have a look at that example just in a second. You can send over everything. You can say that the data is, whatever the form name is, serialize its data, will you? So what that does equivalent to what the browser normally does. If you've got a particular form with all your data inputs all named, it will take each one of those named ones and set a series of name value pairs to be sent over as like a get function. So if you've got a data input field A and a data input field B on this one, it just picks those up and serializes them out. So you don't need to actually extract out just specific ones. That's a bit of a brute force way of doing it. That just says, whatever's on that form, send it to the server. Which might be okay if you've not got too much data on the form. But if your form's got multiple fields on and your server's only expecting 1 or 2 of them, you probably want one of the sort of previous ones just to take specific values of it, just certain parameters. Depends on how much data you're willing to send. The functions that we're going to sort of pick up on using, this val and escape, lets us get rid of some of the things like spaces and ampersands. So if I get the raw text, if you like, out of a field, I ask for val, and that will say, look, whatever's in that field, give it me back. And then whatever they've typed in that field, if it includes spaces and all these other reserved characters like ampersands, exclamation marks, hash symbols, those sorts of things, those all get sort of sent through, and they're a bad thing to send as part of a URL. And what the escape function does is to replace them by the ASCII equivalent. So the spaces, for example, get replaced by ASCII code 32, which is code for a space. That's where you see the %20. The percent indicates that it's when you see something in a web address. Very common to see this. You see this strange sort of %20. That just indicates that it's hex. So back to your first year, 1s and 16s, 2 lots of 16s, so it's 32 decimal, which happens to be space in ASCII. So where you see all these percent symbols, they're hexadecimal sort of numbers representing the ASCII code for that being sort of sent over. And what you would normally have to do if you're doing it manually is go through and replace all those, but the escape does that sort of thing for you to replace spaces, ampersands, all those sort of special characters. So where you put in some space, field space sort of value or new space value, then that would replace. Val gets you the exact sort of word for it, but escape replaces the things by %20s or %21 there. Is it? Can't see, I'm too close up there. But whatever that, can't see too well what that actual sort of character is. But it's gone through and replaced the characters there by 20 for the space, 21, whatever the next one up is in the ASCII sequence. Not going to go too much over on the explicit strings. I just want to quickly get to the bit about locating your data. But in general, what you would do is you would grab out the part that you want. So say you're wanting to pick up specific values of your form. You wanted to pick up one form value being, first of all, then one called param1 and one called param2. So we've got a couple of data inputs. Param1, param2. One simple bit of wording in it. Another one, hey there, big boy. With some characters that are going to be a bit dubious to send across, whether it's exclamation marks or spaces. You want to grab the content of the field. So say, okay, well, grab field 1. So this would have an ID for a particular field. Grab them, escape them, and then send it over with whatever name you like, whatever the receiver's expecting. It doesn't have to be the name that's on the form. That's what the browser will choose. When you name a data input box on a form, the browser will send that name across for you. But you can send whatever named value you want, whatever the server's expecting. So it might be called, this might be called, say, forename here. But you can say, well, just get whatever that is, and let's send it as param1 equals that, because that's what the server's expecting. So you build up a query string, param1 equals something, ampersand, whatever, and then just pass that query string over as your data to send through. To sort of get it. So there, in terms of the HTML, you're giving these things IDs rather than a name. You don't even actually have to sort of name that. You don't even have to put a name parameter into it. So then again, no JavaScript being in there. We've just got an ID onto each one of it, and then it's sending over that sort of data being pieced together. So using that data object, yeah, it's fairly easily created as this URL encoding part to it. Now it might be better just to send those, it's easier often, rather than saying param1 2 equals this, param2 equals this, you can send it over as a JSON object. When this is going off to the server, you can send question mark param1 equals bill, and param2 equals hey there, and all that sort of thing. That's one way of sending it. Or you can send it over as a JSON string and just send over something like all the data equals, and then put it in as a sort of JSON string. Because it's another way of passing your data over, just as one solid object. Much like they are sending you data, perhaps as a JSON string, you can upload data to them in a sort of JSON string. And there's utility methods contained within JQuery that we can sort of have a look at in the lab sessions, where you can pick up these data entry boxes and just say, right, just wrap those up as a JSON string and send it off as one long string to the user for it. So you can basically supply an object for that sort of data property, and the property names become parameter names and automatically URL encoding them. So you can create this sort of list of parameters automatically and get the URL encoding of it done. Now, as I say, we'll have a look at that in the sort of lab session. You can do it manually, or sort of get it done automatically.